Welcome to Pneuma Podcast. I'm Dr. Heather Flood, and this is Sam Tallman. Last episode, we spoke with Dr. Veasey. That episode was about sleep and how important it is. It's not optional, it's foundational. Sleep effects is probably the most impactful on our health and well-being, which is one of the reasons why I lose so much sleep thinking about it.
Right. I think you and a lot of other people.
Yeah, it affects so many systems, hormones, mood, detox, appetite.
Sex. Sorry. Sleep,
immune
right?
system.
Okay.
Sleep. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's important.
It's important.
It's important. I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we spend so much time trying to figure out and optimize our health in all of these other ways. Like, what's the ideal workout? And, I have to have my macronutrients, my diet exactly this way or that way. And, what extra products or supplements am I using? And it's like, hey, if you spent like half of the amount of time with all of these other things that you're concerned about, focusing on how do I give myself the space and resources to sleep a little bit better and to sleep as much as I need to, you'd be much better off.
Yeah.
This is like the core. This is the hub of health and well-being.
Yeah.
It's a controller of so many of these different systems, as you just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. It is, though, just to speak to the human condition. It's so much nicer to just be able to get a pill or, get a quick fix for some of these things where there's really requires foundational and habit forming.
Yeah. I mean, this is a place where the behavioral work is key. And Dr. Veasey talked a little bit about that as well, which was one of the most interesting things. That was actually a surprise for me. I don't know about you, but, this is, a kind of allopathic Western medicine doctor, expert on sleep. And she pretty much just came right out and said, like, yeah, the primary impact of most of these medications for sleep is actually that it makes you forget that you're not sleeping.
Yeah. Which is mind-blowing.
The most important thing is to optimize everything aside from the pills first, like optimize your exercise routine, your lighting, your healthy diet, stress in your life, timing of activities, to really make your sleep as good as you possibly can. Because if you are stressed, if you are, anything else is a major issue impeding your sleep. It's just, there is no such thing as a sleeping pill that can put you to sleep effectively. And this is really, I think the primary example here would be like the tragic story of Michael Jackson, who really was taking every single sleeping pill under the sun, finally would call in like an anesthesiologist to give him general anesthesia so that he could get sleep. And all of that is to say that our sleeping pill medicines are really not phenomenal medicines. And the most important thing to know about anything that's in that benzodiazepine prescription, non-benzodiazepine group, which would include the Ambien type medicines, Restoril, clonazepam, et cetera, Lunesta. Those types of medicines are more likely to give you amnesia that you were awake than they actually improve your sleep. So if we run sleep studies on you and you have a dose of Lunesta one night and you have a dose of placebo the other night, you may wake up the exact same amount of time on the two nights. Maybe you're 15 minutes better on the azopiclone, the Lunesta, but you're going to think that your sleep was much better because you have amnesia for those wake ups. That's not great. That's actually worse because you don't really understand the sleep problem. So we really try to avoid sleeping pill medicines primarily. Melatonin may play a role because there are certain people who actually have low melatonin levels. They have low melatonin levels because they were sleep deprived. That can lower your levels. They have low melatonin levels because they're older. Get up into your 70s and 80s, the melatonin levels can fall substantially. Patients are on beta blockers, different blood pressure medicines, but only the beta blockers do this, will also suppress the levels of melatonin. And melatonin and all the light exposure, inappropriate light exposure, you don't get enough melatonin. So melatonin can have a place for some people, and it actually can improve sleep. And because it's such a good neuroprotectant, if your levels are low, it probably is good to fix it. Today, since you can actually order kits, you could technically check your melatonin levels and see, are you getting a nice increase in melatonin as the lights are going down across the evening. And if you're not, then maybe melatonin is worthwhile. For the other things, like there just aren't good stories there aren't good randomized controlled trials for whether something like magnesium works. It's astounding. There probably are several million people on magnesium supplements for sleep. We have no earthly idea how well they work, right? Yeah. Same thing for melatonin. People will go on magnesium theanine, or they'll go on magnesium alone, or they'll go on melatonin, but we don't have the data to really show in whom those things work, except for the people who have the low melatonin levels. And magnesium probably plays a role if you have a low magnesium level. There are studies that show that babies with low magnesium levels improve their sleep with magnesium. And same thing has been shown in intensive care unit patients. But most people are not going to have a low magnesium level. That's an unusual finding. So they're probably benefiting more from placebo effects. So in general, long and the short of it is tons and tons of supplements out there. Most are poorly regulated. We didn't get into CBD, but that also is just another, Pandora's box. How much? What's the dose you really have? What else is in that thing? I should say that all of these over-the-counter things that are not regulated, when they've gone under chemical analysis, things like titanium oxide are found in them, which is toxic, a neurotoxin. Silica is found in them. Arsenic has been found in small levels in some of the melatonin tablets. So because these things are so poorly controlled, do as much as you can to fix the behavioral components of sleep, with that lighting, low stress, living a healthy, balanced life, and get as far as you can with those before you need to resort to any medications.
That makes a lot of sense. We're going to do our best. We'll report back to you.
Yeah. Most sleep disorders are fixable. That's the other reason it's really fun to take care of people with sleep disorders, because they are fixable. Yeah.
Sleep stages, which I'm sure many people in our audience have heard of, but probably don't have a deep understanding of. Could you just speak at a high level about some of the different sleep stages?
Yeah.
And
I think this is pretty relevant now, because there's so many people, who are looking at, they're getting sleep stage reports on a daily basis from their, Oura rings or whatever. And
we want to come back
apps,
to that,
et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, I didn't get much N3 last night, but so these different stages, we say that something is deep sleep. That's saying that you have an amount of slow wave sleep. That's the non-REM sleep, and it's the deepest form of slow wave sleep. And it's called that literally because the brain waves are incredibly slow during that. And rapid eye movement sleep is another stage. But, in reality, you really need all of the stages of sleep, and you need them in perfect little patterns, because what we've come to realize is that you are establishing you're taking a memory. A lot of things happen to you for the day. Let's just say you went to the grocery store and picked up some mundane items. You parked your car, in the lot in a blah, blah, blah spot. And then you saw a fire truck and it was putting out a fire on a car. So the one memory that's going to be really salient is, wow, I saw this car burning up today and a fireman was putting out the fire. You're not going to really care about where your car was parked. You're not going to care about the mundane groceries that you picked up. And so those different stages of sleep, what they're doing is they're sort of sorting out these memories, the ones that really brought out the bigger salient signal from the norepinephrine, et cetera, into the locus, into the hippocampus. And it's taking those rhythms. Now you're going through the different stages of sleep, and you have these sleep spindles and different waveforms that are in the hippocampus that are these sharp wave ripples, and they're starting to consolidate the memory in the hippocampus. It's going to get downloaded, if you will, up into the frontal cortex, and that's with that slow wave activity. And REM sleep is presumably playing a role also in the memories, but also in the emotional content of the memory. And so all of those stages of sleep are not just they're not just that you need to get to all the stages. They're actually working. They're serving purposes with getting the right memories saved.
Is there a specific time frame that, let's say deep sleep really needs to occur from 10 to 2? Or, is there a specific time where I've heard that if you miss a certain stage of sleep, you don't really necessarily make it up on the back end. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, so this whole process of you really want to have your slow wave sleep up front, and you want it up front for two purposes. One purpose is just that it's helping it's giving the brain a chance to sort of figure out, what do I need to keep, what do I not need to keep, but it's also a time. Slow wave sleep is the time that your body releases this a pretty massive amount of growth hormone. So if you go across the day, you're basically not much growth hormone. As soon as you go into slow wave sleep, and it needs to be a chunk of slow wave sleep, you'll get this massive, 100-fold surge in growth hormone. That's probably not just growth hormone to grow up as a kid, but growth hormones, other growth hormones that are necessary in you for healing cells, regenerating, and things like that. So it's optimal to get early on in the night this nice chunk of slow wave sleep. Dream sleep tends to happen it's concentrated in the last third of the night. Unclear why that needs to be in that pattern. We're still trying to sort that out. But if you wake up too early in the morning, you're probably robbing yourself of dream sleep. If you had caffeine too late in the day, you're probably robbing yourself of that slow wave sleep.
I'd love to leave the audience with just one final little bit of wisdom from you. I'm curious if there is one single thing, and maybe you've already said it, maybe you haven't said it yet, but one single thing that you could recommend to all of us listening to improve our sleep. What would it be?
It's hard to do one thing. The one thing I want to leave you with this. I guess I would leave you with this. Get your sleep optimized and see what that does for you. See what that does for your well-being, your wellness, your interactions, your interpersonal relationships. Sleep is really quite remarkable in the sense that when you sleep well, you live well. And so put as much effort as you can into optimizing it, because everything else will fall into place a lot more easily when sleep does. And it should never be a job. Like some people say, oh, I need to get my sleep tonight. Don't let it become a job to get that sleep. Just figure out what you can do in a relaxed way to improve your sleep.
This is, a kind of allopathic Western medicine doctor, expert on sleep. And she pretty much just came right out and said, the primary impact of most of these medications for sleep is actually that it makes you forget that you're not sleeping.
Yeah. Which is mind-blowing.
Mind-blowing.
And there is a lot of data that points to CBT and other things being really foundational. But I also really loved that was her take-home message, was do everything you can to modify this before
on the behavior side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That said, and I think we were able to get into that a little bit with her, and maybe we'll get into it a little bit more today. But we did also briefly touch a little bit on supplements, and I think there's still hope for those of us like yourself and I that are maybe doing some of the behavioral interventions for sleep, and still it's a little bit of a struggle. I'm curious, some of these other things that people turn to. I know top one that comes to mind is melatonin, right? I think we probably have a lot of people listening right now that use melatonin. Every once in a while I do. I know a ton of people that do to help them sleep. As a doctor, what are your thoughts on melatonin?
Well, Dr. Veasey says this, but melatonin has so many positive impacts in the body. Melatonin is a hormone. It does amazing things. How we're leveraging that as a supplement, I'm not a huge fan of. And yes, there are circumstances where you can have low melatonin with aging, some other things that can have that happen. So first of all, I would say if you're planning on using melatonin outside of jet lag or shift work, where I do think that can be appropriate, then I think you should be tested and see what your melatonin levels are. Part of what I don't really love about melatonin use is we're using super physiologic doses of melatonin.
Say more about what that means.
Yeah, so
for those of us who aren't scientists, which obviously doesn't include me.
So
I'm a real boy. I'm a real scientist. I feel like that sometimes.
You are a real scientist. So your body produces 0.01 to 0.08. I think it's nanograms. Either it's a very small amount. It's a tiny amount of melatonin, and we're supplementing at 3 to 10. Hundreds and hundreds of times that dose. So you're talking about 0.03 as a max number compared to people taking 10 milligrams.
Wow.
At times.
Yeah.
Some people taking 20, which is just wild. But a lot of the sleep supplements have 3 milligrams, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams as a very basic use of that. And so that I do think is I disagree with it being used that way. I would not go over 1 milligram with supplementation. In Europe, they actually require a prescription, and it never exceeds 1 milligram. So that's an interesting thing if you think about how we do or don't standardize supplements. That you have that drastic of a comparison. You can't even get it in Europe without a prescription.
Wow. So for me, like, I guess that really drives two questions. What you're saying is you don't love the way that people often use it, at least here in the United States. There's two questions here that come up for me. One is, what does that mean for the effectiveness or lack thereof of melatonin and the way that it's used? The other is, are there other concerns? So maybe we can get into both of those. Like, is the concern for you that at these super high doses that it's actually not effective, or is there some other concern? I heard part of what you were saying about effectiveness is that some people don't have a melatonin issue at all. So you're supplementing for something that is actually just fine. It's not your sleep issue. But is there an effectiveness issue with taking a certain amount? Well,
also we have to take a step back and look at the mechanism. It is not a sedative. It's actually a cue.
Interesting.
It's shifting. It's basically shifting the brain's awareness of light, right? Like it's cueing light signals, which create a cascade in the brain. So people are using it like a sedative. Like, oh, well, better go 10 grams.
Totally.
Like we gotta get this in there. Where really what it should be just doing is switching your brain to say, oh, we're turning this mechanism on. And we can speak to that mechanism. It's kind of cool. But there are downside effects of that. It does impact hormones. It does impact cortisol. Is certainly for children. I would not use melatonin.
Okay.
It impacts their growth hormones. So that for me is a no. And I think that is a common supplement that gets used for kids for sleep.
You mentioned something that was similar to what Dr. Veasey was talking a little bit about, which is this mechanism of melatonin as a cue, or just generally the way that light and the lack of light is cueing sleep and the onset of sleep and our circadian rhythm. Yeah. And so we talked with her a little bit about intentionally creating that light at the beginning of the circadian rhythm to, set it a little bit earlier, for example, and also cutting off light at the end. I'm curious so you're taking melatonin to cue your brain that, okay, it is time to set things down and go kind of downward in the circadian rhythm. Does light then counteract that?
Yeah.
So, for example, like if you're taking melatonin and then you go and expose yourself to a bunch of blue light,
you're bypassing it in a sense, and that's actually another negative sequelae. Is if you're giving yourself this hormone, your feedback loop will eventually shut off, and your body will stop making melatonin.
Sure. Retroactive inhibition.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so what happens is light actually suppresses melatonin production. We have receptors in our retina that when it gets dark, they start releasing melatonin. And this really starts about 2 to 3 hours before before peaking, before it's effective for sleep, before it like turns on all the way. Which is why often when we give electronic restrictions, we say 2 hours before bedtime. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of hours for people without their cellular devices.
I need my cellular device.
Yeah. But it's because that it's impairing that initiation, that cascade, cueing the body like, oh, hey, we're headed down. We're chilling out. Melatonin, as it gets darker, melatonin then surges.
Body temperature drops.
All
things sorts of hormonal
it's
changes,
cooling
as you mentioned.
And calming.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does, yeah. And then, the opposite is true. Then in the morning, we want to suppress it. Also, melatonin has a dynamic with cortisol, which is a stress hormone. And they are kind of opposing each other. They do opposite things. And so that's also interesting when we think about behavior and sleep. If your cortisol is high, your melatonin is low, and vice versa. So in a way, cortisol is suppressing your capacity, not just light, to produce melatonin.
And cortisol, like importantly at the other end of things, because, I could see this also being an impact of taking too much melatonin. I'm curious if you find this true or not. But, we think of cortisol as a stress hormone, but cortisol is also just a wakefulness hormone, right? So it's part of the reason that your body is able to wake itself up. So I'm imagining that there is this suppression of cortisol.
Yes, and that's exactly right. Like in the normal curve, you have your melatonin spike. And then around 2 or 4 o'clock in the morning, that melatonin starts coming down and your cortisol should naturally come up. And we have something called cortisol awakening response, CAR. And that peaks and it kind of has this quick surge, gets you up and out of bed, gets you going, and then kind of chills out. And you have another, surge a little later in the day around 4 p.m. But you're right. So people who take these super high doses of melatonin often report feeling groggy and sleepy and have brain fog. And it's like, yeah, well, you're dampening
you haven't allowed your body to wake itself up the normal way.
Correct.
And then you get on this roller coaster of trying to control and modulate your own rhythm, and you're just not going to do as well as your body could do.
And now you need more caffeine because you feel groggy, or you need your extra Ritalin or whatever is going on, to activate your system. I mean, is it Tuesday?
I was just itching my nose. Sorry. Nothing to see here. This is also related to the dawn effect. For those of us with diabetes, there's a rise in blood sugar around the time of waking up. It kind of kicks in at a slightly different moment for different people, but same reason, right? You have this spike in cortisol. It's actually releasing energy. So, for people that don't have diabetes, there is a release of energy happening, which won't be happening, perhaps, if you're taking too much melatonin.
Yeah, and cortisol, that makes sense, right? We when we're in fight or flight, we want glucose, sugar, to be available for our fight, right? So of course, as we increase our cortisol, we should have that natural lift to support movement or combat or whatever it is that we're asking the body to do.
But even more than that, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, especially around the stages of sleep. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, I do want to speak to the stages. And first I want to point out, Dr. Veasey mentioned there are some people that naturally need less sleep. but it's something like 0.004% or 0.007. You're more likely to get struck by lightning than be someone who naturally needs 4 hours of sleep or a very low amount of sleep. So there's that piece, but there's a couple stages. There's the non-REM, non-rapid eye movement stage that has that basically is like the difference between the stages is essentially like how much noise can I make without waking or before you wake. Like that's how we measure this. So stage 1 is like 80 to 85%. Stage 2 is like 90-ish. And then you have your deep sleep. Deep sleep is where you're getting more physical recovery. And then after that, you have your REM cycle, which is your rapid eye movement. And that's more dreaming. That's more emotional consolidation. That tends to happen towards the latter part of your sleep chunk, 8 hours or however much it is. Your REM tends to kind of be mostly the last third of your sleep. And in general, the cycle, it's 90 minutes of that cycle going through those stages. But for deep sleep, what's curious?
And so you go through that 90-minute cycle a few times
repeatedly.
Each night.
Each night, and then kind of towards the end, you're down in that REM, rapid eye movement, more.
Right. The distribution of the different stages also changes over the night. So towards the end of the night, you're spending a lot more of that 90-minute cycle, or approximately, in REM.
Yeah.
And a lot less in deep sleep. At the beginning of the night, actually not technically the beginning, you're in the early stages mostly.
And
then
so
the middle of the
two
night, you're in that deep sleep.
Yeah, kind of 2 chunks where deep sleep is happening, more on the front end.
Right.
Which also kind of speaks to if we're getting a short night's sleep, we're robbing ourselves most often of REM quality sleep. Which is just kind of interesting, especially in our society.
I'm curious. I want to circle back in a bit to talking about the behaviors and the stories, but just touching on that, the REM versus deep sleep. You mentioned that the deep sleep is the place where the body is doing a little bit more recovery. What do we understand about the function of REM sleep? Like if we're robbing ourselves of REM sleep, then what does that mean?
So non-REM, I think of more physical body. So immune function, hormonal health, brain detox. With REM, it's I think of it more focusing on the emotional body, memory consolidation, emotional processing, that kind of thing.
Sure. Memory is maybe its own whole topic, but interesting that what we're robbing ourselves of in sleep so often is our capacity to support ourselves in emotional regulation.
Right. I was just saying how ironic in this culture that we're missing that chunk. Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to, you were talking about the stories that people have.
Can I interrupt?
Please.
Because I think this is an actually important point. When we're thinking about deep sleep, specifically in relation to wearables, I think it's so easy to see these numbers and you see this deep sleep. We all know we want deep sleep. We love deep sleep. But the average expected number for deep sleep is 1 to 2 hours. That per night, that decreases as you age. So somebody in their 40s might average, upper end 1.5 hours. Someone 60 or older, a healthy number is around 45. So I think that this is also something that can happen with wearables where we don't actually have information to process accurately what we're seeing or what we're given.
And that dovetails pretty nicely also though with anxiety about sleep, right? And so this is one of the stories that people have, right? That then feeds into I'm a poor sleeper, or, I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm already not getting enough sleep. And, my such and such device has already told me that, or any other number of ideas that we can get in our head aside from what's going on in our bodies, or aside from what might otherwise be going in our head about the day or about our day tomorrow, but just our ideas about sleep actually can get in the way of sleep.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I mean, the mechanics are kind of simple. If there is a stressor or something that is an activator, we call it arousal system. If there's something that's an activator, that is going to supersede your sleep drive. So
Any kind of arousal.
any kind of arousal.
Interesting. Noted.
Yes, they tend not to go together.
Some kinds of arousal help you be unaroused at future moments.
Maybe.
Okay. Curious. We'll circle back to it.
Yeah. So, there many patients. What should happen is your sleep drive should, number one, be increasing as the day proceeds. There's a number of ways that happens. Adenosine gets released throughout the day and starts building up. The changes in light, energy expense. There's various ways in which our sleep drive increases to hopefully a threshold where we're sleeping over being active.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone has anxiety, ruminates, is in an unsafe environment, and quite honestly, it doesn't need to be so overtly unsafe. Like if your brain is active and hearing noises and worrying about the next day, it's going to be in a heightened state.
Yeah.
And so actually a lot of people who have sleep disturbances will report, still the day after no sleep, they're still amped. They might, in some of these sleep studies, have 5 opportunities to sleep during the day and still don't. They're just like really revved up. They're really amped up.
And I think Dr. Veasey was mentioning something about that as well with some of her patients.
Yes.
I know you've talked about that with your patients.
Yeah. And so, the role that that our behavioral patterns, what we allow our brain to do in orientation to sleep is huge. And for a lot of people who, I don't know how it feels for you, it's torture to not sleep.
Yeah.
It can be really torturous.
One thing I for a long time have had issues sleeping, and a lot can be said about that. It's a full episode. It's actually a full series of episodes about what's going wrong in here.
Chapter 1.
But one thing that my dad, this is fascinating because my dad actually is famous for not sleeping a lot. But one thing that he said to me when I was fairly young, if I remember right, like maybe I was a teenager, he was like, don't worry about not sleeping. Like if you're laying there, you're getting rest. Like you just need to get some rest. Like even if you don't fall asleep the whole night, just lay down and like relax and like you'll be getting rest. The interesting thing is like whether or not that is fully clinically or scientifically true, I'm sure there's ways in which that's true and there's ways in which it's a limited truth, but it's very effective. It is an incredibly effective thing to say.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. That was great advice.
Yeah.
And that is like some of the work we do with people is identifying what loops are happening and doing exactly what he told you to do. Change the story. Like my body is getting what it needs.
Yeah.
It knows what it needs. I'm okay. Last week I had a patient who, she needed permission if she had a bad night's sleep not to perform in certain ways the next day. And one of the loops was just like, tomorrow is going to be awful and I'm going to have to do all these things I don't feel like I'm capable of doing. And so in part we were like, oh, what if you gave yourself permission to not do them, to take care of yourself in a different way?
On the flip side, this was something interesting that happened a few weeks ago with my partner. One of my diabetes devices, my insulin pump, went off in the middle of the night. It had some kind of error, and it creates this horrible beeping
It's
noise.
the most horrific sound.
you know, if you know, you know. It's an unfortunate club of people that know, but you also know. Anyways, it, you know, it goes off and it's like beeping for a while, and normally it shuts off when you press the button, but it wasn't shutting off because it was, you know, had additional problems. And so, you know, it's probably like 10 minutes of this high pitched, like blaring noise.
It's as if there's a fire alarm in your ear.
There's actually some really funny Instagram reels about like how they've like intentionally tried to make it horrifying.
Oh, they've done
Anyways, so basically it's going off for like 10 minutes, and like my poor partner is like not that used to this. And so she's like pretty wide awake. I eventually get it off, thank God. And then, you know, naturally, she starts thinking about the day that she has ahead. And she was getting stressed because she had some really important meetings that next day. And she was like, what if I'm not going to sleep? What if I'm not going to like perform well during some of these meetings? And we talked through it. We ended up like similarly, we were like, hey, we might not sleep. Like, let's just have a date right now. And we ended up like staying up for a while and hanging out and talking. It was like, it was one of my favorite periods of a few hours that we've spent together.
Yeah.
Like, also we were a little bit goofy because it's the middle of the night, and that's fun.
That's sweet.
But the interesting thing about that was like, we totally, for both of us, because I had some important things the next day too, were able to rewrite that story and just be like, both of us, you know, like, and really, hopefully, if you're listening, you have found this to be true at least a handful of times in your life. Like, when the moment comes, you generally step up, and even if you don't feel that you stepped up to the task, all hell did not break loose in most of those circumstances.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is going to be okay. It might be a tired day. It might be a sleepy day. You might not say everything you're supposed to say or in the way you're supposed to say it. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll step up. Either way, it's probably going to be all right.
Yeah. I mean, I even have patients who, you know, move from their bed. I can't sleep in my bed. Now I'm going to sleep in the lounge chair. And now I can't sleep in, nope, the lounge, that doesn't work. I'm going to sleep on the couch. I can't sleep on the couch. So they're like moving all over their house, creating stories in each location. You know, they're dreading. It's like, oh, here we go. You know, so when another kind of technique, I think, that is, first of all, really challenging. Well, number one, the bedroom is for the two S's only.
What's the second S? Whatever could
Not
you be
sleep.
talking about? So there's sleep and there's not sleep.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So sleep and sex are the only things that you should be doing.
Sorry, I really didn't see that one coming. I didn't know we were going there with this podcast.
I know. Things are getting risky.
Okay.
So the two S's.
Great. Yep, like that.
Yeah.
Both eyes can wink.
I know.
Okay.
So essentially, like, you're not doing work in your bedroom, you're not hanging out in there, and this is very challenging. But you only need to do this for a short period of time. When you're resetting things, I think in conjunction with CBT and some things that can reframe your pathways, your mental loops. But for a couple weeks, any time that you're awake for more than 20 minutes, that you get out of bed and you go into a different location and you do something really chill. You know, you read a book. It should be not stimulating in any way. Maybe you stare at the ceiling somewhere else. But you're breaking the habit and the pattern of, I'm awake in my bed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So this is no longer a place that I spend hours flipping and flopping around and checking my phone or whatever. It's like and then you leave, you go do whatever thing it is. I personally recommend red lens glasses during this time. And then eventually you're going to feel sleepy and you go get back in bed. And so it actually, as someone who doesn't sleep, we can both attest to this. It is so hard. You're not sleeping, but you don't want to get out of bed. You're not awake in a way that you're like, oh, let me just hop up here. It feels bad. Right. You know, like, I want to be honest about that. It feels like the wrong thing to do because you're so exhausted and you're, pulling yourself from this warm, comfy thing. But that is super impactful for one of the ways that we kind of start redirecting the associations and behaviors.
Very cool. I am actually going to try that.
Yeah.
Flood, thank you so much for some of your insights around sleep. Helped shed some additional light on what we talked about with Dr. Veasey. Well, that's all from us for now. You stay classy, Numinati. We'll see you soon.